Can I ask you for a favor? If you like this course, would you mind giving it a positive review? Of course, I would love for you to give me a good review, but the real reason I asked is due to something called the Franklin effect. Now, if you don't know anything about Benjamin Franklin, he was a major influencer in his lifetime. He was a politician, inventor, author, scholar, businessman, and we can take a lesson or two from him on how to influence. So there's a famous story about Benjamin Franklin that lives on in the legends, and I'm going to share it with you now. Wake up, brain, another story for you. So here's how the story goes. During Benjamin Franklin's first term in office, he made a lot of friends and a lot of enemies. And as his re-election approached, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to get enough votes to win the re-election. So one of his adversaries, his biggest adversaries, was a highly influential person. And Franklin knew that if he could sway that man's opinion, he would be able to get enough votes to win. But instead of trying to convince him or bribe him or cajole him, Franklin sent him a letter asking for a favor. He asked if he could borrow a favorite rare book from the adversary's collection. Now, the man was flattered and excited to find Franklin had similar taste in books, and he sent Franklin the book right away. Franklin read it and returned it with a thank you note. Now, according to Franklin's autobiography, the adversary then approached Franklin during the next legislature meeting, and the two spoke congenially about the book and other common interests. Not only did he stop speaking ill of Franklin, but they actually became friends. And this is how Franklin discovered that if you ask for a favor, you win a friend. And he used this repeatedly throughout his life. And now I'm going to teach you how to use it. First, we have to see if this has been backed up in science. And indeed, the Franklin effect has been verified. Let me tell you about how they verified the Franklin effect in the lab. So in this experiment, psychologists told participants that they could win some money. Well, in the experiment, an actor pretended to be the lead researcher and treated participants rudely while demanding they complete the tests. So he would sort of haggle them and tell them they weren't going fast enough. And at the end of the test, the participants won a small amount of cash. Now, here's where it gets interesting. They had 3 different trials of what happened next. So as soon as the student won the money, they left the lab. In trial 1, the fake scientist follows the students out of the lab and asks for a favor. He says, "Would you mind returning the cash? I'm funding the study with my own money and we're almost out." In trial number 2, a secretary runs after the students and asks for the same favor. So they said something like, "Would you mind returning the cash? They're funding the study with their own money and they're almost out of funding." In trial number 3, the students were able to keep the money and no one asked them to return it as a favor. A few days later, the students were asked how likable they thought that fake scientist was. Now remember, they thought that rude scientist was really the lead researcher, but in fact he was just an actor. And they asked the students, how likable do you think he was? Can you guess which trial rated the fake scientist as the most likable? Oh yes, just as the Franklin effect predicted, the students who were asked a favor by the rude scientist also rated him as the most likable. Now, this is pretty crazy because you would think that when someone asks you a favor, that would irritate you and you would like them less. But in fact, the opposite is true. Both research and history proves it. When you ask someone for a favor, that makes them perceive you more positively. So how do we use this in our own life? The biggest thing I want you to take away from the Franklin effect is don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, the solution is not to ask favors of every person you meet. That would be disingenuous and very spammy. I call those people human spam. But I do want the Franklin effect to show you that asking for help is not only okay, but awesomely influence building. Here's how you can use the Franklin effect to increase your influence in an authentic way. I want you to get in the habit of regularly asking for advice, opinions, and guidance. And this has huge benefits in 4 ways I want to talk about. First, it gets people talking about their opinions. When you ask someone for their advice or guidance, they talk about their stories, their experience, and their vulnerabilities. 2, it stimulates interesting and unique conversation. So this is a great conversation starter. I've had the best dialogue with people when I ask them for their advice on something. Third, The Franklin effect is an easy way to admit vulnerability and the need for guidance. Remember how we talked about going naked, that vulnerability increases your connection and your charisma because it makes you relatable to other humans. So this is an easy way to do that by asking for guidance. And fourth, it's a very authentic way to use the Franklin effect. You're not asking for favors like human spam, you're asking for true and real guidance. Here's a way to easily do this in conversation. So once a month, I go through my goals and challenges, and hint, hint, I'm going to help you do this next. And when I do this, it reminds me of some of the areas that I need help with, so that when I'm at networking events, parties, or coffee meetings, I bring these challenges up and ask for advice. So here are a couple of examples or ways that you can phrase it. 1, I would love your advice on something. I'm very blatant. I'm very transparent with when I need advice on something. 2, hey, can I brainstorm some ideas with you about this new blank project I'm working on? Or 3, speaking of which, do you have any thoughts on how to fix, change, solve blank? Because oftentimes people will say, hey, what's going on? Or how's work? Or how's the family? And you can bring up any challenges that you were just talking about and ask for their opinion. And this leads me to my challenge for you. I challenge you to pinpoint your current goals and challenges. I've designed the following prompts to help you think about your goals for the coming months and then figure out what your biggest challenges are and who you might be able to ask for help. The first prompt I want you to answer is, what are 3 goals you have for the next month? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to achieve? Next, what are 3 challenges or problems you are currently facing? So when you think about your goals, what's stopping you? What's holding you up? Is there something that you need to figure out? And then lastly, who can you ask for help with these issues, and what could you say to them? So look at your calendar. Do you have any coffees coming up with people, or can you set up coffees to ask for help and guidance? Are there topics or types of people? So for example, are you having trouble with a blog or a work issue or a friend issue or a family issue? Are you going to any parties or events where you could ask a certain kind of person for guidance or help on that? Just thinking through these prompts can help you make sure that your advice, what you need, is in the front of your mind. I also challenge you to create a calendar alert to remind yourself to come back and revisit your goals and challenges at the beginning of each month. This keeps you incredibly focused, and when you want to increase your influence, you'll know what topics that you want guidance on that you can ask to people around you. I have a quick inspiring story of how this worked in action with me. So Malaz Mohammed is one of our awesome Science of People interns. She's a part of our Science of People research team. And she's just wonderful to work with. I've loved having her on the team. And this is a quote from her: I firmly believe everyone should have a chance at deep and rich connections with other human beings. So her perspective on life is fantastic. And she uses a lot of our body language principles and our influence principles in her daily life, including her interactions with me. So one day I get an email from Malaz, and she asks me for a recommendation letter that she can keep on file about her work, which was a small favor that I was happy to do. And as I was writing the letter for her, because she's wonderful to work with, I found myself thinking about ideas of who I could introduce her to, other possibilities that I have for her, projects we could do together. So just doing that favor for her made me want to help her even more. And after the fact, I realized that, that was the Franklin effect in action.